Hello, now we are going to look at how to safely use knives for preparing food. And before we want to use our tools for any reason, we're going to make sure we have our first aid kit out and with us. We're going to have our trained first aider whose training is in date, and everyone is going to know who that first aider is. And before we take out our knives for any reason, we're going to check our blood circles. So the area and arm span around and behind us is completely clear of anyone. When we've done that, we can take out our knives. The first thing we are going to look at is how we can use a knife where we have a cutting board to cut down onto. And that's what we're going to look at in more detail now. So when we want to use our knife with our cutting board, we have our knives always stored in a sheath. This is a piece of PVC pipe that was heated with a heat gun outside. So we only do this type of work outside, and formed to the shape of our kitchen knife. Because our kitchen knives have to be as sharp as any other knife we use, it's important that they are in a sheath. So we check our blood circle all the way around and behind us, and we can take the knife out of its sheath and put it to one side. When we are holding onto our pieces of food that we want to cut, it's very important that our fingers not slope out where they could get caught by the knife as we're using it. So the key feature for keeping ourselves safe with a cutting board type situation is that our fingers sit around so that they slope down away into the food as we are working. So that the side of the knife could rub up against the side of our fingers, and there would be no danger of us catching ourselves as we were having the knife come down. Beyond that, there are two styles to using our large kitchen knives. One of them is that the knife is going to curve downward away from us, and the other is that it's going to drag backwards to give us a slicing action in both cases. So our fingers sitting around in a claw type shape, and we're going to have the point of the knife facing down, and we're going to push down away from us and slice in this style. So that's one way that we can use the knife. When we have stuff that is smaller, it's often helpful to put the tip of the knife down against the cutting board. Again, the fingers sitting in a claw so that they can't get sliced as we're working. We can draw the knife back across us, and that gives us a lot of control, particularly for smaller things that we would be cutting. But the key feature for keeping us safe with our holding of our food is our fingers held so that they slope backwards into a kind of a claw type shape to keep the knife unable to reach them as we are slicing with our kitchen knife. Now we are going to look at how to use a knife to prepare food where we don't have a cutting board, using the paring cut, sometimes called the potato peeler grip. When we want to do food prep without a cutting board, we would often use the paring cut. So we use a smaller knife for our paring cut, usually, and we always have our knives in a sheath because all of our knives have to be very sharp. So we check our blood circle and take the knife out of its sheath and put it to one side. And when we want to do the paring cut, what we're going to do is turn the knife around in our hand. So normally we would have the knife with the cutting edge facing away from us, and the palm of our hand holds the handle of the knife. What we do for the paring cut is turn things around so the cutting edge sits pointing back at us, and the handle of the knife sits in our fingers. So not down in our palm, but up in our fingers. And the way that the cut is going to work is that we are going to close our grip so that the knife comes around in an arc and it goes past our thumb. As I'm closing my grip, the blade comes around past my thumb. And I also pivot on this thumb. So I'm going to do some cuts where I am going to rotate on that pivot point of my thumb. So it's a combination of closing the grip and pivoting on the thumb. So let's have a look at how we would use that to peel some fruit. So our thumb sits down below the surface of the thing we are peeling, and I am going to rotate around on this thumb. So I'm closing my grip slightly, but the main thing I'm doing is just pivoting around. So I start the cut right up next to the handle of the knife, so my blade is in contact with the fruit or with the food up near the handle of the knife, and then I rotate down around on my thumb, keeping my thumb well out of the way of my work. And I rotate, I pivot on this thumb, and that allows me to do a very controlled cut. There's no way for that knife to come back at my thumb and cut me, because what's happening is pretty much entirely just that I'm rotating around. There's a very small closing of my grip, but there's very little force involved. I am mostly just letting my thumb act as a fulcrum, act as a pivot point. So that's how I can peel with my paring cut. I can also take slices of material off with my paring cut. So again, thumb below the surface that I'm cutting, I'm going to cut around this way, and I want to make sure my thumb is down underneath where I'm cutting. So I start the cut right up next to the handle of the knife, and then I rotate, and I'm closing my grip a little bit more this time. And by rocking back and forth several times, I'm able to slice through. I don't want this food to fall on the ground, so just at the end of the cut, I'm going to sit my thumb on top, and now I can take the piece of food away. So if we do that again, the cut starts up near the handle of the knife, and I rotate around, and when I come near to the end of the cut, around here, as I come down to do my last slice, my thumb comes up on top, and I can pull the piece of food away and put it on the frying pan or put it where I'm preparing food without it falling on the ground. And that is how we can prepare food using the paring cut where we do not have a chopping board. And that is how we can use a knife to prepare food where we have a cutting board and where we do not, using the paring cut. And that is what we need for now.